you always see these best plays of the year, countdown lists and all that kind of stuff. So I thought I'd do my version of that, which is the, best ghost towns of 2022. And, there's no scientific method here. It's just, these are my favorite towns that I visited during the year. These are really just the most memorable places that I visited. And sometimes it might be because of an abandoned building or two or many, or it might have been the people that I met there. It might just be a interesting historical thing that happened there. So that's how I came up with this list. It is surely subjective, so I invite you to put in the comments your favorites, your list. In 2022, I have released videos about 160 different towns, small towns, ghost towns in the United States. And so I'm pulling this 10 from that 160 that have been released during the 2022 year on this channel. It was a tough list to make. I could have made a list that was at least 50 deep. If you're a fan of my channel, make sure to stick around after this countdown. There's some more, I think, interesting things for people that have been so supportive and they're interested in this subject, so stick around after this countdown. And as always, remember, if you're visiting any of these towns, always be very respectful of the places you're going. Sometimes it's private property, sometimes it's not very clear. Obviously, don't do any kind of, damage to the property. Leave it as you have found it so that we can continue to explore and learn about the history of our great country. So without further ado, let's check out the best ghost towns on Travel with the Wise Guy in 2022.
Number 10 on the list is Englewood, Kansas. And I wasn't expecting much when I visited Englewood. It's down by the Oklahoma border, but there's so many old and abandoned buildings. And then when I learned about the history and how much, Wild West history there is there, just really became one of my favorites I've ever visited. There's so many buildings to see. They have an old high school there, and you can see by the drone shots of kind of how desolate it is out there. So really, really great town, Englewood, Kansas. Number 9 is Brewster, Nebraska. And this is part of my smallest towns in Nebraska video. It was right there in the middle of the top 10. And what's really interesting about Brewster is that it's the smallest incorporated county seat in the entire United States. So as you're looking at this town, this is as small as it gets in terms of county seats. But besides that, there's just a ton of old buildings and a pretty long main street that you can walk down and see all these buildings right here in the video. So really awesome place to check out in Nebraska. Number 8 is Red Oak 2 near Carthage, Missouri. And it's called Red Oak 2 because it's not typical of these other towns where it used to be a town and it got smaller, but it was designed by artist Lowell Davis, and he moved buildings from his hometown of Red Oak, which was a ghost town, and other towns in the area and made it into a creative town where there are people that actually live there. But it's full of these interesting buildings that are all put together in kind of a circle of one street, and it's just an incredible place to walk around and explore. It's basically an open air museum of old historic places and art. So one of the cooler places that you could walk around and check out. Number 7 is Grassmere, Idaho. And this is the one that I took a detour from when I was exploring the Oregon Trail. This is out in the Owyhee Desert, far from anything else, and it's totally abandoned. And I just took this video an opportunity to walk around and talk about what I was seeing there. And it's a pretty amazing place to check out, and you can see from the drone shots how desolate it really was. And so for me, a lot of fun to get out there to somewhere so remote and just explore for a little while. Number 6 on the list was not a ghost town. It was an abandoned resort near Branson, Missouri, named Indian Ridge Resort. This is a $1.6 billion project, and as you can see, they didn't get it finished. And it's really interesting and creepy, and one of the more amazing places that I was able to see in 2022. It was just spectacular to walk around and check out. Number 5 is Nicodemus, Kansas. And Nicodemus is known for being the last remaining Western settlement by blacks in the United States during the Reconstruction period after the Civil War. It's just full of history, and the entire town site is now a National Historic Site. So there are lots of old buildings to see, a lot of history to learn. There's a lot of things documented, and the people of Nicodemus are very welcoming. It's just a really, really terrific and wonderful place to visit. Number 4 is Two Guns, Arizona. And I'd originally stopped here on my Route 66 series a few years ago, and then made a return trip when I was on US 89. And this is one of the first videos of 2022 that I did. And I was always fascinated with it because it was just this interesting place that had a lot of history, but it was also very unusual with some of the things that had happened here. There was a death cave that you can walk down. There was a zoo of odd animals, and then you see all the abandoned buildings. So very, very interesting and cool place to check out in Arizona. One of the last towns I did is number 3 on the list here is East Calico, Arkansas. And this is billed as the only ghost town that's within another town. And that's because this is part of Calico Rock, Arkansas, and this segment of the town, I guess you could call it, is East Calico. It's a kind of a tourist attraction, and there's a lot of signs that tell you what all the buildings were, and there's just a lot of interesting places to check out. It was raining that day, and probably made it look a little even creepier than it is normally. In the runner-up position is Pinhook, Missouri, and this one really blew me away when I saw it. As you can see how rough it was inside the one house that was basically still there. And Pinhook was destroyed not too long ago, just a few years ago, by flooding, and now it's a virtually abandoned town, although the official population still has a few people there. This was on the smallest towns of Missouri video that I did, but it was a bit emotional walking around and seeing how this town was destroyed just recently by some massive flooding, and then the story behind it is even more sad of how the people didn't have a lot of notice for moving out. Number 1 on my list was not difficult for me. It was the smallest town in Nebraska, Monowai, Nebraska. And it's a great story, and obviously there's the small town feel with the old houses and the abandoned places and all that, but certainly the reason it probably topped my list was because I got to hang out and interview Elsie Eiler, the one resident of Monowai. It was a great way to end that video.
If you like that list, how about some more? I started visiting ghost towns in 2021, and I actually visited about 80 to 85 in that time frame. Starting in March is one of the first time I released a ghost town video was March of 2021. So I thought since I didn't do a best of list last year, I'll tag it to the end. And so here's my 5 favorite towns from 2021.
Number 5 on the list from 2021 is Kenton, Oklahoma. And it is way, way on the western panhandle of Oklahoma. In fact, it's only a couple miles from Colorado and a couple miles from New Mexico. It's by far the furthest western point of Oklahoma, and it feels like it's in a whole different state anyways. But there's a lot of great old buildings. There's some interesting history, and because of the mountains in that area and the elevation, it's just a really, really beautiful area to visit. Number 4 is Thistle, Utah. I've only done one ghost town video from Utah, and this one was hard to keep off the list. As you can see, it's kind of an amazing little place with one house that's flooded, and that was because of what happened there in a landslide years and years ago. And so you can see the old pictures and what it is now, and it's right there by US 89, which I did the whole series on in 2021. So really remarkable little place to explore, and the fact that that one house is still there and floating in the water is spectacular. Number 3 is White Cloud, Kansas. And this was early on in me visiting some of these towns, and this was the first one that I found that really embraced some of the history that they had there. And there's a great downtown with old buildings you can see kind of all up and down the main street. And it's way up in northeast Kansas, and a very, very beautiful part of the state. They have a museum there, and I've heard that they have a big festival every year where people come back to White Cloud, and that's a really cool place to visit. Number 2 is Bannock, Montana. And this was in a really spectacular area of Montana, which most of the state is spectacular anyways, but this was way out there and very cool place to check out. It's basically a state park, and they've recreated the town with all these buildings. So a lot of them have been moved here, and it's, you pay a admission fee and you go around and walk around and check out these buildings. And so it was a really cool place, a little touristy, but certainly well worth the visit and the long drive to get there and to see places like this long, creepy hallway in what was the main hotel in the town. And at the top spot is the video that started all my ghost town exploring, is Pitcher, Oklahoma. And, when I went and explored Pitcher, it really made me think about wanting to see more places like this. And Pitcher is one of the most, one of the biggest ghost towns ever in the United States, where there's like 15,000 people, and now there's no one there because of toxic contamination there from mining. And what's left is spectacular and sad and just really incredible to explore. So this was the first ghost town I ever did a video on, and the video, I think, really stands the test of time.
If you're still watching, you're probably more of a diehard fan of this channel. I really appreciate that. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've got planned in 2023. I've already filmed a little bit of footage that I'll be releasing from Nebraska and Missouri and Arkansas. I'll definitely be doing more from Kansas at some point throughout the year. And you'll see some things from Kentucky and Ohio that I'll film over the holiday break that I'm on right now. And a big trip I'm planning is to Texas. So if you're a fan of Texas or from Texas, there should be some interesting content coming from there. After that, I don't know. I've been asked quite a bit about where I'll be going on a summer road trip, and honestly haven't thought about it yet. Very busy with my job out there on a daily basis, coaching track and field at Wichita State. So I don't know yet, and probably will think about that later on into 2023, but definitely will plan something interesting and document as best as I can. The channel has continued to grow. It's always humbling. I don't know how many subscribers are right now on here, but it's probably in the 8,000 subscriber range, which always, as it continues to grow, it just boggles my mind, and went over 1 million views on the channel. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone. I hope everyone's having a happy and safe holiday season, and all the best in 2023.